Hello everybody, here we are today. We're going to be doing a recap of CFL Week 2 action and giving my thoughts on it. Now before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or the channel. Now, let's get into it. So the first game of the week was the Calgary Stampeders traveling to Ottawa. This one early on, especially in the first half, I made a meme on my Instagram talking about how there's a lot of checkdowns in this. But at the end of the day, Calgary was really able to capitalize off of points off the turnovers. You had the Devontae Dedmon fumble where the Stampeders scored just a few plays later after that. And then you had the Brandon Dozier fumble recovery for a touchdown where he ends up going up to the log and acts like he's using the chainsaw to chop up the wood like the Red Blacks do when they celebrate. And so for that, I think that it was pretty apparent that the offense for Calgary was really bailed out just because you saw the defense end up getting some points for that and then putting them in good field position to score. On top of that, in this game, you saw the Red Blacks bring in Tyree Adams, and he was obviously coming in to replace Nick Arbuckle, who was kind of lackluster. And I think the weird thing with Arbuckle in this one is we see a lot of just very short routes to kind of keep the chains moving and to keep these drives alive. But the weird thing that I think here is with a lot of these short routes, do they A, not think he can throw the ball downfield, or B, do they think that they don't have enough time to throw it? Because my logic here is they were on the right hash and we saw Arbuckle throw a pass that was behind the line of scrimmage and it was to a receiver that was on the numbers. So right there, that can tell you that he can throw the ball deep, but they just, for whatever reason, keep doing these short routes. Either way, it wasn't working. Arbuckle at one point did have a pretty bad interception, I think right after the Red Blacks defense had just got an interception off Mayer. Might have been the play after it was Alway that had the pick. But yeah, so you saw Adams come in here, and really the only reason that this first half was closer than it was Brendan Dandridge had a pretty big return, and it might have been a score. I can't find it to where he scored on it, but I could have swore watching this game he did have a score off the punt return. But yeah, basically the only reason this thing is even close at halftime is because of that and the fact that the Stampeders had a few bad turnovers. I think Mayer might have overthrown a receiver once and it ended up being picked, and I don't remember if the Red Blacks got any points off that, but that happened. Now, the other takeaway here is later in this game, I think Lewis Ward towards the end of the third, might have been at the very end of the third, was going for a field goal. He missed it, and instead of it being 22-15, it was 22-12 Calgary. Eventually, the Stampeders go on to win this one. Jake Mayer looks a little bit more comfortable with throwing the ball a little bit deeper, a little bit less check-downy feel for him as he ends up having a pretty good stat line. But again, part of it, I think, was a throw to Malik Henry that went pretty long in terms of yak yards after catch. And all around, the Stampeders able to get a good win against a team that's kind of down and out. My opinion is if Mazzoli is going to be out a little bit longer, then they should probably have Adams in at quarterback to start a game or two over Nick Arbuckle as the Stampeders win 26-15 in Ottawa and get their first win of the season. And then the second game of this weekend of action, or this week of action, was Saskatchewan, of course, hosting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This game was much better than I thought it would be. I didn't get to watch it because CFL Plus said the game wasn't in my region, so I kind of listened to it on the radio, stuff like that, where they have the CFL radio thing. But I will actually say, Trevor Harris, who probably wasn't expected to play in this game, actually ended up having a really good game. Went 29 for 41, went for over 400 yards, and had 3 touchdowns. Those 3 majors being to the 7th overall pick in the 2022 draft, Samuel Emilus. And Emilus had a good game, of course. I think this was the first touchdown that he had in his career, so to end up getting the hat trick in one game is great for him and kept his game in it, or his team in it, as well as other guys like Sean Bain Jr. and Tevin Jones having good games as well. They were going toe-to-toe with the Blue Bombers in this one, but of course, Winnipeg was really able to be bailed out by Dalton Schoen having a good game, as well as a lot of other guys. But then they had a Janarian Grant punt return, which was insanely long because, well, the field's long, and it was just a great return by him as the Blue Bombers eventually pull away out of this one. They end up winning 45-27 in a rivalry game. But after this game, my thoughts here are, A, Winnipeg's defense, how is that going to work? Because there's a few moments where obviously if you allow 27 points, it's not great. But B, this was kind of a more pressing thing, was Saskatchewan might be a lot better than I expected them to be. Harris to go for those 400 yards is really good. Now, I do think that, some things would have to be cleaned up on, but in general, Saskatchewan could be a team that finishes higher in the standings than I thought they would be. In Winnipeg, of course, puts up 40 plus and gets a win. If they score 40 plus, they're probably going to win this one, and in general, that's the case all around. They did, so let's move on to the third game. So the third game was Edmonton taking on BC at BC Place, and it's going by a new name now as we got some naming rights going on, Save Mart or whatever it is. And this one was a good game if you're a Lions fan. Luckily for me, I am a Lions fan. Bad game for Elks fans, as Edmonton was shut out for the first time since 1976 as BC wins 22-0. The Lions defense allowed a little over 150 total yards, and the offense was able to get it done without Lucky Whitehead. Not a whole lot to say about this game because obviously it wasn't a big affair, but Vernon Adams Jr. I think finished with a pretty good stat line here. Sean White was 5 for 6. Field goals. Maseko Lacombo ended up having a good game too. Bo ended up having 7 tackles. And for the Lions, they of course have this defense that really has impressed the first 2 weeks of the season. Edmonton, despite all the money they put into trying to improve this team, has scored, 13 points through the first 2 games. And you kind of wonder, Trey Ford, is he going to go up there and is he going to start next week? Probably not, according to Chris Jones, as he says they've got their quarterback. So they want to ride with Taylor Cornelius, that's fine. Not saying everything's on him, especially because this BC team looked pretty good the past 2 weeks. But at the same time, you realize that Edmonton's not going to be having a lot of easy games against other really good teams out west. Are you kind of protecting Ford, or are you thinking that Cornelius is going to be in a spot to win you games right away? I don't know, because I was saying that it wasn't a bad idea to roll with Cornelius, but at this point, unless you're really worried about Ford stunting his development or something like that, you got to throw him out there in the game for this week. I don't remember who they play. I want to say Hamilton. That's probably wrong. We will see, though. No, Hamilton plays Montreal. I don't know. But anyway, good win for the Lions, bad loss for Edmonton. And then the final game of the week, the Toronto Argonauts got to raise their banner after they win their 18th championship in franchise history, and they get to take on their arch rivals, the Hamilton Tiger Cats. This one was close fairly early, with it being 8-6 in the first half. I'm not going to go too deep into this one because the final score obviously showed some distance between these two teams as the Argos end up winning this one. It was ugly for a few reasons. One, Hamilton was taking dumb penalties that extended drives and allowed points to be scored off of those penalties, thanks to getting a first down here or there. Two, the coverage, the linebackers, the DBs, all that stuff looked really bad. There's points where it seemed like, Chad Kelly didn't have a big game where he threw for 500 yards or anything like that, where there was just open gaps right in there where you're able to throw it in between defenders. Seemed like 2, even if the defender was there, they almost froze up because they were unsure what to do when the receiver got the ball. DeMonte Coxie ended up having a great game too. He had 131 yards, great for the Memphis product, and was just part of this Argos team that seemed to click and take advantage of some turnovers. Of course, that's where Hamilton was really in a spot where they could have scored some points. Bo had a couple of bad picks. Bo got hurt. And you look at this, Matthew Schultz ends up coming in and being really good in his relief appearance, going 9 for 10. Now, of course, that was for, I think, 90 yards or whatever. You kind of wonder, would he be able to replicate that? Probably not. We've seen him to where he is a good guy to come in and spark the offense, but is he a good starter? That's kind of another question to be pulled here. But the Argos, of course, end up winning this one 32-14, pretty convincing fashion. Hamilton tried to get some things going late. My takeaways are this. Duke Williams seems to be Bo Levi Mitchell's primary target at this point. He had a good game, but in general, Hamilton has got a lot to clean up, and they've got a lot to figure out in terms of the 0-2 start and what's going to go on at quarterback. For the Argos, Chad Kelly had 3 rushing touchdowns and is acting like he is him as a quarterback, as a franchise guy. And the Argonauts, I think I might not have respected them, which seems to be the team that people say I look over the most. From what I saw in this game, they're able to run the ball well too at points. They got a lot of guys that can run the ball for them, so that is really good as this receiving core continues to impress, and the defense definitely did the job here. Those are the 4 games for this week, and of course, plenty of things happening this week, but I really was excited to see the action we saw. What are your thoughts on week 2? Who was the most impressive? Who was the most embarrassing or just bad? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new, and be ready for my previews for the week coming out on Wednesday. Anyway, everybody, please make sure to stay safe and have a great night.